During the year 2018, there was a series of events commemorating the 175th anniversary of the founding of Brown Chapel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Ypsilanti, Michigan. These celebratory activities were designed to highlight the motivations, efforts, and commitment of the founders' desire to establish a place of worship for the Black community and to facilitate the spiritual development of the people it served. The establishment of Brown Chapel served as a place to build a sense of community, maintain a cohesive family structure, to serve as a gathering place for all types of social and political activities in the Black community, and to some extent, showcase pride for the physical, emotional, and mental well-being of the community. Most of all, to leave a legacy for future generations to build upon. Through this effort, we are continuing our spiritual journey by faith.
Our story begins with the founding of Mother Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Philadelphia by Richard Allen, a man with vision, drive, and a dedication to his people. Allen's religious conversion came in 1777 as he attended the largely white St. George Methodist Church. Along with Absalom Jones, Allen was increasingly frustrated with the discrimination they and other blacks faced in their effort to worship in the mainstream Methodist Church. In the 1790s, Allen and Jones led the black members out of St. George after black congregants learned they could not sit in their normal pews and pray the way that they wanted to pray. Rather than comply with the segregated Sabbath, as they called the action of St. George, Allen, Jones, and their followers left St. George, giving rise to the first African church in America. In March 1793, Allen awoke before dawn, prayed to the Lord, and then prepared to dig a cellar for the new church. That church became the first meeting house of an African church erected in the United States of America. The ground that was cleared that day became St. Thomas African Episcopal Church, located at first between Philadelphia's Walnut and Locust Streets. Mother Bethel AME Church emerged in the summer of 1794 when Allen used pack mules to move the structure to its present location. In 1901, the cornerstone was laid for Brown Chapel AME Church, and in 1904, the church was opened at a cost of $6,000. A new brick building replaced the older wood sanctuary and would be a symbol of the community's presence in the city. Designed by James Kersey and built by locals like the Bow family with construction experience. It was the hands of the parishioners themselves that built Brown Chapel, and no hands were more important to that effort than Weltha Sherman's. Born in the area of Queens Bush Settlement in Canada in 1851, Weltha was a tireless worker for her community during all of her 9 decades. She was mother to her community and active for its relief and uplift from her arrival in Ypsilanti in the 1870s until her death in the 1940s. Legend has it that she would take her wheelbarrow and go from one construction site to another asking for donations of materials to be brought back to build Brown Chapel. The present building was dedicated in 1904. The church, then and now, was the central institution in the life of many black communities, and one of the few places where blacks could exercise control over an institution of their own.
I was raised up in Brown Chapel.
My name is Yvonne Doolin.
I have been a member of Brown Chapel for, I'd say, 25 years or so.
I ushered in the church, and I sing in the men's choir. And I did a lot of things in the church.
My name is Willie James, and I've been a member of Brown Chapel since 1978, so that would put us at roughly 40 years. My wife, Carolyn, well, state your own name.
Thank you. My name is Carolyn James, and I'm his wife. So I have been here for 40 years also.
I did find Brown Chapel very welcoming when I came to here on a number of occasions just to visit before I joined. And I wanted to know if this church could be a good vision, a good fit for me.
We both grew up in South Carolina, and we moved to Michigan in 1977. And shortly after we got here, we went around to a few churches. And when we got to Brown Chapel, we decided that this was going to be our church home.
It was really something. My mother would say, "Come on down to church and do so and so and so." She didn't have to tell me over there once. I'd be there.
Well, when I came here, it was 1948. I came here on the train as a girl. I didn't know Brown Chapel or any place. And I had an uncle that already lived here, great uncle. And he belonged to Brown Chapel. And he talked my mother and us into coming to visit Brown Chapel. So we did. And I really liked the church. We did. And the next 2 years, I joined when I was 10 years old. And I have been at Brown Chapel since then.
My name is Reverend Maymet Dahlberry, and I have been a member at Brown Chapel since 1981, and I'm currently a staff minister. Brown Chapel to me is family. This is a church, we have a congregation, we have members per se, but the way we one another, the way we support each other, in good times and in bad times, and celebrations and homegoings, funerals, it's just, it's a feeling of love, of that unconditional love.
A community that everybody knew everybody. Like they knew my dad died when I was 10 years old, and they knew my mother worked. She had to go to work for the Kirks. She had to be there at 7 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And she'd work all day. You know, when my dad died, she worked all day. You'd be surprised how many people would cook and come by and say, "Well, I cooked too much, Amanda, so here's dinner for you and the kids."
I remember Mrs. Hearn just kind of took us in because she was just that kind of woman. And we used to go to their home after church. And
Parsons.
yeah, they were right across the street. And one day I said to Mrs. Hearn and the Beatties, we would like to have you all out to our house for dinner after church, because you know you're always inviting us over. And Mrs. Hearn looked at me and she says, "Honey, can you cook? Can you cook well enough to invite somebody to Sunday dinner?" And so the Beatties and the Hearns came out, and we had a wonderful time out there.
We came to Ypsilanti, Michigan in 1969, April of 1969. As I was working in a daycare center, I ran into Eloise Powell, who was the wife of the Methodist minister, George Powell. I was so happy because now I could go to the Methodist church that I was a part of before.
We were very well received and welcomed. Yes. Our kids were young, and we just sort of felt at home, I guess you would say. It was a beautiful atmosphere. At that time, the church was packed. I remember coming in with our youngest son, which was about 8 months old at that time.
Yes, he was.
In my arms, and the ushers had to find seats for us to get, together to sit as a family. Our oldest son was about 4. And so from that point, we just grew and fell in love with Brown Chapel. Actually, it was last Sunday morning because it was here at 8 o'clock service. And we've been doing that for a long time. And the reason we started 8 o'clock service, it was as a family, because during the day that I worked 6, 7 days a week. And I saw Sunday as the only time as a family. So I would come to church many times and have to prop, or she had to do this to me to keep me awake, because I have worked on Saturday night and maybe got home early Sunday morning or late Saturday night. And that has stuck with me. Today, I can't break it. We've been retired 14 years, and I have to get up and come to church, or I should say, 8 o'clock Sunday morning. It doesn't matter. I got to be here at 11 anyway because I sing. But from the commitment standpoint, I'm not right if I don't get here at 8 o'clock service.
They try to get me to sing.
You and I are kind of alike.
Well,
Well, you used to sing in the choir, in the cantatas.
Oh, yes, she did.
Yeah.
Yes, she did.
And your mom?
Oh, heavens, yes. Aunt Edna, oh, my goodness, yes. Sounds like a bird. She sang beautifully.
I just remember hearing tapes of the cantatas, of all the voices in the cantatas, of my great-grandmother, who I never met.
Yeah, used to get up early on Resurrection Sunday to go to the cantata.
Because you couldn't find a seat, from what I hear.
no, you couldn't.
I've been a member of Brown Chapel 40 years. 40. The songs that we sing, if you sing them with the written word, it will help you to just to do and to accomplish what you are trying to accomplish. You want your brother and your sister to hear what thus says the Lord verbally in the hymnal. And as they say, it's not rocket science. Singing the songs does something to me, and I know it does something to some of the brothers that are singing the song along with us.
So, I grew up in Brown Chapel. I started coming here since I was, 1 or 2. My grandmother used to bring me to the church, and I sit in the back pew, second to back pew of the old Brown Chapel, while Mr. Beatty and Mr. Clark would be in the back making faces at me while she's trying to keep me quiet, and they're in the back making googly eyes to get me to start laughing and giving me candy. That was probably one of my earliest memories at the church.
And I remember it's interesting that the 4 of us are doing this today together, because Dr. Kamuyi was the officiant at the naming ceremony of our twin daughters. Mm-hmm. We had a 2.5-year-old son when we came here in 1988. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But when I entered the ministry in 1993, shortly after that, we found out we were having twins. So they grew up in the church under the eyes of everyone. Brian used to, in the old church, used to crawl under the bottom of the pews to the front. And we sat all the way in the back, and you could always tell where he was because you'd see people looking down like, what's that? Yeah. People knew it was Brian. But when the girls came along, we named them, but we had an official naming ceremony when they were 1 year old. And Kamuyu was the officiant to take them through that process.
That's right.
In the Kikuyu way, I guess.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful, the whole church were there. The Somervilles, the Warrens, the James. We have a video of that now. And so this was our family. My family in North Carolina, I have lots of cousins and brothers and aunts and uncles. And, we came here for the university position. We didn't have that here. And so this church members became our family.
Everybody I would talk with about an AME church said, oh, well, there's only one that you really want to bomb, and that's Brown Chapel. When I started here, we were serving, and still is, serving community. People coming in all the time needing various things, and we always responded. Sometimes we were not able to totally support the effort they needed, but we found ways of getting them that effort.
Another reason why I like it, because we feed a lot of people. Every Friday we feed over 100 people come here to eat and get food, and we pass out food. So it's it's really, really being part of the community and giving back to some of these people who really need it. We give them a hot meal, and then we pass out bags and bags of food to them. As you can see, we have a bunch of stuff, and then we give it all to the public.
So Brown Chapel was one of the first churches I went to when I came to Ypsilanti. I was a student at Eastern. I didn't go to church then, but I met my wife at Eastern. We raised a family here in Washington County. My mother-in-law came from Saginaw to Ypsilanti, and she settled at Brown Chapel. And as a family, that was one of the first churches we went to.
My belief is that Brown Chapel has been consistent and true to its mission from 1843 to the present. And I think it's encapsulated in that phrase, united in brotherhood for the good of the community.
I mean, Brown Chapel is an institution, not just a building. And I think we can confuse that. The building can be removed, the building can be moved, but the institution is what's the constant. And I think it provides a nice sense of comfort for the people on the south, not just the south side of Ypsilanti, but I know people that live in Pittsfield and live in Ann Arbor that come to Brown Chapel because of that sense of community.
I come here, and I've come here for many things. I come here for Sunday services. Unfortunately, I've been to funerals, but I've been to many celebrations too, from weddings to birthdays to celebrating good things in the community. This Brown Chapel is a gathering place. It's a community. It's people who care about each other. It's people who take care of each other.
Because you know when you come to Brown Chapel, you'll be welcome. And people will wrap their arms around you and they will do what they can to make you feel invited, comfortable, and gives you hope. And I think in communities that are challenged, that sense of hope is extremely important. I think Brown Chapel brings that.
Churches, when they're relevant, are much more than being a building and a place where people convene once a week. It really reaches out into the community and impacts all facets of life. And when you think about the ability to contribute, not only spiritually, but attending to the other needs that people have, ensuring they're fed and clothed, a clothing closet in order to be able to help address some of those needs, those are all really important contributions in the community. And so even for people who aren't officially a part of the church, there's an outreach aspect of that that's very important.
Certainly, Brown Chapel has aided the community and provided leadership in the community. A lot of our leadership came out of Brown Chapel, AME Church in the community. Brown Chapel can no question what they have done for many of the disadvantaged in our community for providing services.
In 2011 or 2012, I was working in partnership with Ypsilanti Public Schools and Willow Run Community Schools to talk about how the two districts might come together and create a new school district. And Pastor Hatter was engaged as part of the Ministerial Alliance and an active member of the community who understood the importance of ensuring that we had high quality education opportunities for the students that lived in Ypsilanti. We realized early on in the consolidation process that if we didn't have the support of the community and the heartbeat of the community oftentimes are the churches that exist there, we were not going to be able to move forward. And the Ministerial Alliance came on board. Pastor Hatter and the people at Brown Chapel recognized the opportunity that was available through the consolidation, and they were part of helping spread the message to the people in the community.
My first experience with Brown Chapel, it was back when there was the anti-affirmative action ballot initiative, and we were looking for a place in the community where we could have a rally and say, faith voices, community voices, everybody wants to come together and say, we need to be able to do laws on the books that help improve equity, improve inclusion, and Brown Chapel is the perfect place.
And it's a testament to the commitment of Brown Chapel to the children and the viability of the community that you engaged in that process. And it was a pleasure and an honor for me to be able to work with Brown Chapel and the other churches in the community. And Pastor Hatter's leadership and his wife, they were visible in a lot of community meetings. And so it was something that without that kind of support, I don't know that we would have had the success that we did in bringing those two districts together.
And I remember Pastor Hatter leading just beautiful, beautiful community gathering. We had a rally out here in the parking lot. And that's when I really started, Congressman Dingell, John Dingell was here. And I really saw the heart that Brown Chapel has for the community, the place that Brown Chapel has in the heart of the community. and that this is a congregation that is here. It's here to serve its members. It's here to serve the people, but its service is beyond. It's community-wide, and is really a voice for everyone here in the community.
Praise the Lord. I'm Pastor Jerry Hatter from Brown Chapel. I've been here some 27 plus years. I came here in 91, and at that time we was over at 401 South Adam, which we now call our East Campus, and we have had quite a ministry flow in these 27 plus years. So it is my happy privilege to be the pastor during these times of great adjustments, great growth, and great opportunity to serve this community, which we love. And we thank God for that.
As far as what the church has meant to the community is, it's like a lighthouse to me. It's like a lighthouse. And the light shines for people who not only are in dark places, but people who are seeking to find their way. The church it serves the community in so many ways. Mm-hmm. It's not just a place of worship, but that's important. It's a family-oriented church. It's a community access church where people from the community, various groups and organizations can come. They can hold meetings. We're a resource-driven church, so people come and they learn about what they need. Mm-hmm. We are a church that reaches out and tries to help. We participate in various community events such as the Crop Walk. Mm-hmm.
And we are hosting the
Poor People's Campaign coming up.
Summit.
That's coming up.
End of this month. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so we try to be a church that meets the needs of the communities. We have a pastor who, as well as the members and leaders in the church, who put their fingers on the pulse of the community. They hear what's going on, and we try to be open and address the needs.
Thank you for this opportunity, Brown Chapel, to take part in your anniversary celebration. There's no question that being a product of Ypsilanti, I've always been familiar with Brown Chapel, AME Church here in this community. Brown Chapel not only is making history with this anniversary, Brown Chapel is history. For the many things they do to contribute to the good of this community. There's no question through the pastor and the leadership that's provided through the ministerial staff of this community, we see the contribution they render. We see the contribution of the church membership. The church membership that has acted in a variety of organizations and community activities in our community for the good, and the good of not only our young people, but our middle-aged adults as well as our senior population. Brown Chapel's role has always been that role in this community, and we're grateful for the service of the members and the ministerial staff as leaders of this community. Over the years, you have contributed greatly for your leadership in bringing the annual Brotherhood Banquet to us. Way before I was even born, Brown Chapel had and conducted yearly their Brotherhood Banquet. They brought our community together from all walks of life, from our faith community to the community at large, for even those who were not part of a church home, but they came together unified under the leadership of Brown Chapel to celebrate brother and sisterhood, which is so important at times like this. And then I want to acknowledge the fact what you do every week. Provide food for those that are needy and hungry, your clothing mission, your outreach ministry, your food that your mission society gives, the work they contribute to make this population in the community have a place of refuge. I want to thank Brown Chapel, its ministerial staff once again, the pastor, and all of those who have labored to keep this church the rock and the solid ground that you have done for so many years. Happy anniversary to you, Pastor Hatter, and the entire church congregation. God bless you.
Began this journey in 1991, and we've come a long way, and we thank God for it. And we privileged to be a part of this 175th church anniversary. We've gone through a lot of ups and downs and a lot of journeys that have ended up in victories, and we've had some setbacks, but through it all, God has brought us from a mighty long way. And along the way, God kept us, and as a young family, we arrived here in Ypsilanti in 1991. And, during that season, up until 2008, Evangelist Mary Hatter and I arrived here with our 5 children. Some of them are just graduating from school and all of that. And we've been here for a while, and along the way, at the passing on of Evangelist Mary Hatter in 2008, 2 years later, God blessed me to have a helpmate right here, Reverend Gwen, and we have begun this ministry journey together. And as we celebrate this year, this 175th, the first thing is that our theme is continuing our spiritual journey by faith. And so we're walking by faith, indeed.
God, my feet. God, my feet, Lord. God, my feet. And while I'm on this pilgrim journey, I want Jesus to walk with me. It's God, my feet, Lord. God, my feet. God, my feet, Lord. God, my feet. And while I'm on this pilgrim journey, I want Jesus to walk with me. Just be my friend, Lord. Be my friend. Be my friend, Lord. Be my friend. And while I'm on this pilgrim journey, I want Jesus to walk with me. Be my friend, Lord. Be my friend. Be my friend, Lord. Be my friend. While I'm on this pilgrim journey, I want Jesus to walk with me. Don't leave